furthest recesses of the internet, located in some guy's basement, this is Gaming Geek. And now, here is the host of Gaming Geek, Michael Baker.
Thank you everyone. Welcome to Gaming Geek. Let me introduce our contestants. First, from Crazy Import Land, we have Mike Menke.
Hello.
Hello to you too. Next, from Massive Dragon World, here is Nathan Schlaufen.
Hey.
Hey. And finally, hailing from Bizarro Question Kingdom, Michael App.
Hi.
Hi. Today's categories are RPGs and monkeys, RPGs and fruit, and RPGs and bowel movement. Mr. Menke, would you please choose?
I'll go with RPGs and fruit.
Alright then. For this series of questions, I will name a piece of fruit and give a description, and you have to name the series. Let's get started. For 100. Banana. Nice, simple, nutritious, easily packaged. This game is always popular.
What is Dragon Quest?
And that's correct.
I'll continue with the fruit, please.
For 200. Apple. Sometimes sweet, sometimes sour, a variety of colors on the outside, but always the same on the inside.
What is Final Fantasy?
That's right, Nathan. You choose next.
Let's take this category.
Okay. For 300. Durian. Powdered as tasty, but stinks to high heaven.
What is Cladoon?
That is correct.
Fruit for 400.
400. A plum. Small, sweet or sour, but bite it and you might choose sweet.
What is Mega Tensei?
That is correct.
Fruit for 500, please.
The final question in this category, here we go. Pineapple. Takes some work to get into, but a nice balance of sweet and sour. Be careful not to bite too deeply or you might come away with bleeding gums.
No.
Anybody?
What is SaGa?
That is correct. Congratulations, Mr. Epps, you have won. Woohoo!
Congratulations, Mr. Epps. You're our winner for today. You get this audiograph copy of Unlimited SaGa.
Thanks.
And our runners-up go home with a year's supply of Potion. Yes, Potion, official drink of Square Enix since 2006.
Anyone want to trade prizes?
Strap on your swords, ready your spells. You're about to enter the heart of a dungeon filled with computer and console RPGs from way back when, right up through yesteryear. To get you through this maze that's dripping with danger, we've gathered the best men and women from RPGamer to watch your back. Some of you have never entered this area before. You're in for quite a fight. For others, this return visit can only be described as an RPG backtrack. And here are the party leaders for this expedition, Phil Willis and Mike Minke.
And from Salt Lake City, Utah, and all the other corners of the United States, even outside the United States, this is RPG Backtrack number 73, Romancing the SaGa. I'm your host, Phil Willis, and my co-host, Mr. Mike Minke.
I'm supposed to have something witty and clever to say, but I've been made so bitter by seeing endless political ads lately that I have nothing that would be pleasant to hear. I'm sorry.
And our our contestants on tonight's Backtrack, Mr. Michael Baker.
Hello.
Mr. Nathan Schlothen.
As always, I'll expect it to slow.
And Mr. Michael Apples.
Error 53, server is currently busy.
Today, these three contestants will try to work together to convince us that the SaGa Frontier games are actually good.
We already had the Frontier game.
Yeah, we already accomplished that.
You're taking on a much more difficult task this time.
Yeah.
You're going to explain how Unlimited SaGa works.
Ooh.
Yes, and this is the game that has a 500 kilobyte read this first file on GameFAQ to explain the game system. And it's kind of necessary if you want any detail, because apparently the manual in English just it's not worth the recycled paper it's printed on.
You were about to let loose an expletive and you held back at the last second.
Yes.
Good times. So, well, let's just jump right into it, shall we? We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
For people who will not be in your district.
My name is Phil Willis, and I approve of this message. Right, so I guess we're gonna talk about, dare I say it, dare I mention it, Unlimited SaGa.
Bum bum bum.
Bum bum bum. Developed by Square, published in North America by Square Enix. This is a PlayStation 2 single-player RPG experience released in North America on June 17th, 2003. It's almost been a decade, and boys and girls, a decade just is not long enough. This is rated T.
Or tortured?
Yeah.
Torturous? Or,
I'm not.
I don't know.
I'm actually enjoying the game right now, but
that's because it's turned off.
Because actually, no, it's on right now. It's the game I played before this was just that. What's right?
Think about that, Phil.
Issues.
Mr. Baker
Yeah,
just played something that makes Unlimited SaGa seem pleasant by comparison.
Dark Spire?
I thought you just played Metal Max.
Oh
No,
no!
you didn't.
I put up a review last night for PAL Shinken Densetsu,
Oh.
which, yeah.
What was the final
Compared
score
to-
on that?
1.5.
1.5.
Oh. I see.
Yeah,
It's in the
compared to that-
Cladoon range.
Yeah, compared to that, Unlimited SaGa is actually a breath of fresh air. At least it is, now that I've gotten used to the attack reels again and I can nail the high-level attacks every single round.
Now, incidentally, how does the Japanese manual compare to the one that Square Enix foisted on us in North America?
It's slightly more informative.
Emphasis on slightly?
I mean, this is not just SaGa, this is Unlimited SaGa we're talking about. I mean, like Dungeons and Dragons had 2.5 with Seiko and all that. Japanese RPGs have Unlimited SaGa with so many minor statistical things built into the system that nobody ever says outright that it's crazy sometimes.
So, I will share my brief experience first, because I'm usually a lot more shallow than you guys are, and then you guys can dive into all of the various details.
Go for it. Let's rip
Yeah.
the jaw.
So, thankfully, in this case, my poor memory will probably save save us some time. So I remember when the game came out, it came out to fairly poor poor reviews. Taking a quick look on Meta, it's average of 45%, and the user, usually with JRPGs that do kind of poor, usually the user score will usually still be a point or two higher, if for no other reason because of the fanboys and the such. But in this case, the user score is actually lower at a 4.3. But I saw it in the store in the used copy bin for $5, and I'm like, seriously, $5? Why not? It's Square Enix. Come on, it's Square. This is the name that I've grown to know and love. Let me give it a shot.
When I got my copy, I think the exchange rate came up to about $2.
There you go.
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself,
this is in Japan.
And I remember, the review, at the point that I was in the store, this was like a year or two after the game had come out, so my memory wasn't quite, I just remember kind of getting some bad reviews. I remember saying something about bad graphics. Not a big deal. I like RPGs because they're RPGs. The graphics, so who cares about those? It's got, it has, it doesn't show you I remember reading and seeing the graphic screenshots where it doesn't really show you like first-person perspective in a dungeon, like we've kind of gotten used to these days. It's all very abstract, and I'm okay with abstract. We play D&D. It's very, that's very abstract, especially if you don't have a grid board handy. So I went ahead and bought it, took it home with the best of intentions, and boy, is it abstract. I mean, it is weird as hell. I just remember it being so far out in left field that it was no longer in the ballpark. It was somewhere in the next city. It was just that far out there.
You mentioned Dungeons and Dragons grid maps, and that's actually a pretty good comparison to the way these maps look sometimes. It's like they took the concept of a Dungeons and Dragons style map and just put it into this.
Which would have been cool. I mean, in all honesty, if it was just the fact that it was abstract, I mean, I bought that kind of knowing that and being okay with that because, I am kind of, that is how we play D&D. And in fact, when I played D&D back in the college days, we played it more abstract than most because many times we didn't even have a battle grid. It was just, as the DM, I would just simply explain the scene more or less, and the players would tell me what they want to do. So it was very abstract. But this kind of the abstractness isn't so much what killed me as just far as how in the hell does all this combat make sense? And you mentioned I just couldn't quite understand how the variables on your character sheet relate to one another. The deal in combat where you can get the roll a wheel, right? You got to stop an attack wheel or something. I should have thought that was fun because I really like what's that series that does that? Shadow Hearts.
Shadow Hearts.
I love Shadow Hearts to death for that one mechanic. I've often said that it only takes something small like that to get me involved in a game, in a JRPG, because I'm so tired of just hitting attack and then the computer does all the work for you. I miss rolling the dice. Well, that's one way to let the player roll the dice, so to speak, and be involved. But it just didn't connect with me on that one at all. The graphics were in the battle scenes and stuff where you finally get some graphical representation of what's going on. They were ugly as sin. I swear this says it's a PlayStation 2 game on the box, but I'm serious, that could have worked like first generation PlayStation 1. It does.
You haven't played a lot of first generation PlayStation 1 games lately, have you?
Oh, it was that bad. My eyes were bleeding. The 3D graphics in the battle. The character shots, like when you're looking at the 2D, when you're in the town and something, and you're looking at the hand-drawn pictures, and and there's menus to get around the town. So it's one of those games where you're not actually walking around town, but you're just picking where you want to go from a menu. If I remember, those were okay. The art style, I like that art style. It was static, but that we have that in a number of JRPGs that are menu driven. So that in and of itself wasn't a detractor for me. But yeah, when you got into the battles and they go into a 3D battle, you're like, okay, I've done a lot of abstract, got some 2D graphics, got some abstract. Maybe now I'll get some cool no. First, yeah. PlayStation.
I think this game may have worked better as a portable game. In that respect.
Sure, because you're going to get it on a smaller screen. The 3D graphics. It's kind of like Final Fantasy VII. I've said that before. If you played that on a big screen today, your eyes will will bleed into especially in 3D combat portions. But when I played on my PSP, where the screen's only 2 inches, wow, all of a sudden it looks not so bad. So anyway, so long story short is, yeah, it didn't really last that long with me, and I really gave it a good college try, and then it became a $5 coaster. So now we'll let you guys get into details. First off, can any of you experts on the panel tell me, does this thing actually have a story?
It's got about 7.
So it's like a SaGa Frontier in that regard?
Before we get to the experts, I think I'll talk for just a minute, since I guess
Okay.
my perspective is pretty similar to Phil's. I rented the game once, and I played it a little, but I mean, I just couldn't get into it. I mean, I just picked one of the characters at random since I knew nothing about them, and they weren't quite as colorful and immediately interesting as the SaGa Frontier characters, which disappointed me. So I just picked like the guy who had the random story of the Cursed Gauntlet, and I'm pretty sure the first fight beat me up completely. I had no idea what was going on. And it's just like, I can't beat the first fight. What the heck? After that, I just picked up the other characters at random, and I just couldn't get into it. The way the map exploration works, the way the battles worked off of just the random wheel, nothing made sense. The whole presentation's very unappealing. It just didn't work for me, and I never really played it again after even just trying it a little. Just I have no idea how to even approach it. It's just kind of a shame, since I really like the SaGa series as a whole, but this one just couldn't get me at all.
Yeah, it was like with SaGa. Yeah, the SaGa Frontier, I liked the other ones more or less, and I was really wanting to give this one a really, really fair shake. I think that's the one thing I don't want to come across like I popped it in, tried it, and then was done with it. I mean, I gave it the college try, but it just, after 4 or 5 hours, I just gave up. It became a coaster. So, story! Can anybody tell me, was there a story to this? 7 stories. Well, just talk about one of the stories then. Or was there like an overarching plot?
I'm not sure if there's an overarching plot or not. I mean, when I first played this, it was back in 2006, and my Japanese reading level wasn't as high as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if you had asked me my thoughts about this game 6 years ago, it would have been very interesting to read. But I'm playing through what's supposed to be the easiest of these 7 quests right now, just in terms of what's available and how much money you can make to support you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Quote
the one that you
unquote
started with,
easiest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it has been pretty easy as long as I've been keeping up on the side material instead of pushing through the story. I mean, I tried to push through the story a bit into the 3rd plot point and got myself hammered to bits, so then I just took some time off, had some fun with it, and no problems after that. But in this story, it's the character's name is Ventus, and he's part of a guild of delivery people, carriers. And there's some sort of plot going on involving an item called the Dragon Heart. And this vampire lord is trying to recover all of the parts of the Dragon Heart, and we don't really know why yet, but I'm currently in a prison full of undead trying to fight my way out. It's been pretty interesting. So.
I think the stories are kind of simplistic for the most part. I can't really remember much about it. I mean, most of the time you're spending going through, these adventuring areas, kind of away from the main story. So, that kind of happens in bits and pieces. And most of the time you're just exploring, which I think suits the game just fine.
I was going to say, most SaGa games are kind of like that.
Yeah, but I think this is a little lighter on story than even, the usual series entries. But, it works, and a lot of the side adventures have some neat stories to them. So, some of the adventures you go on have interesting requirements and things like that. So, I didn't really miss an involving story playing this. Although that might have been just because I was figuring out exactly how to play the thing.
So what about the characters? Because SaGa Frontier had some interesting characters.
Well, I said there's Ventus, the delivery boy, And who else is there?
There's the squirrel type guy.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be gathering materials to help save his village. I haven't
Yes.
I never actually played him. There's the fortune teller, who she's not always very accurate. Apparently, she likes to try and fix the odds in favor of her getting anything right. So sometimes interfere. If that's the right word here.
Who are some of the other characters?
The youngest one's this 10-year-old magician who's trying to rescue her dad from the mirror world or something like that.
There's a former pirate.
Yeah, is he the guy with the glove?
It's a girl.
Oh, her. Okay.
I can't remember what she looks like at the moment.
Tall blonde.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there's Mike. He's a blacksmith. I don't know exactly why he's out doing stuff. Yeah. And who else is there? And then there's the guy with the cursed glove. His entire quest involves him trying to get the thing off.
Yes, Kurt in the U.S. version.
And
it says here Cash in the Japanese version.
Yeah, that would be right, Cash. Yeah, and basically, don't play this one for the story.
Yeah.
And don't play for the characters?
No, I mean...
some of the characterizations are pretty good. It's just... It's what you have to work with to begin with.
Okay. So what about... Well, I guess that goes right into gameplay.
Yes. Oh, gameplay.
And of course, the first thing everybody remembers is the attack reels.
Yes.
Yeah. Which, thankfully, are not actually random. So.
Yes. They kind of represent dice rolls, except that you can obviously learn to hit them just right and
thankfully there's no time limit on them.
Yes, that was a nice touch.
Yeah, so you can just watch them go around and around and around a bit, and then, ooh, boy, just hit a level 3 attack. Okay, yes.
But these reels aren't just used in combat. There's also...
Yeah.
As you explore, and I guess you could describe exploring sort of like I don't know if you want to call it a board game, although that's probably not the best.
It's closer than anything else you could describe it as.
Yeah, it's if you imagine like the computerized approximation of actually playing D&D, that's probably the best way I can describe the gameplay here. You know, you're basically moving from room to room. You'll get a description of what's there, and then there's various things you can interact with, and your characters will have different skills. Like there might be a treasure chest. There's different ways you can open that. There might be like water. If one of your characters has a swim skill, you can swim.
Mm-hmm.
And there's various skills like that. If you run into a trap, you'll get a reel, and that will just determine the exact result there. So it's like playing a tabletop RPG essentially.
Yeah. And back to the reels, any reel associated with identifying, disarming, or unlocking chests is going to be a real pain because it's determined by the chest level as well as your skill level. And that means that those reels can be very random.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. On the other hand, you can very quickly take a rest by just pressing the L3 or R3 buttons on the PlayStation 2 controller and just take a round to heal up.
Which
is important because this game treats hit points in a very different way.
Yes, if you don't figure out quickly, you'll be very confused. Just one of the things I don't really like about this game is they
I'm
don't really
actually I remember.
explain the hit point system all that well.
Oh yeah, that's true. No, I'm just remembering actually a Q&A column from many years ago where the topic was like it was actually involving desperation moves in Final Fantasy VI, and Wipers were always lying down a bit when they were down to the last few hit points.
Yes.
And the idea was that the last few hit points were actually the core hit points. Else was kind of stamina that you had to knock off first before you could deal the final blow.
Ah.
And that actually describes Unlimited SaGa's system really well because you have the hit points, which are effectively stamina, and you
Right.
have the life points, which actually matter. So it's possible to knock a character down to 0 hit points and they're still up and hitting stuff.
Right.
But the
What
lower
could
their
be
hit points, the more likely an attack will hit a life point and they'll suffer permanent damage.
Yes, I was just going to say that can probably be confusing to people, in that sometimes they could have full HP, get hit really hard, and lose LP, even though they still have HP left.
Yep. Oh, because some attacks target LP specifically too.
Yes. And I'm also going to say that the idea to use R3 in a completely turn-based, menu-based game is ridiculous. Because it took me, not looking at the manual, it took me forever to figure out how to rest to restore HP.
Yeah. I had to start this game after the first 30 minutes because I'd forgotten the resting bit. And I didn't survive the first level very well because I kept hitting and forgetting to rest afterwards. Yeah.
Yes, this game is not forgiving of you not knowing how to play it.
Yeah.
If you forget something or can't figure out something, the game is not forgiving in the slightest. Because you really, especially in a lot of the longer dungeons, you really need to be able to rest.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then there's the next interesting thing. Some of the side quests have turn limits.
Yes.
Which, I mean, the first one that comes to mind is a quest where you have to help a butler search through the first floor of a house to find something that he's misplaced, and the master of the house is going to be returning pretty soon, so that makes sense to have a turn limit there. But some of them, that was just a little odd.
Yes, one of the nice things about this game is that, they kind of take advantage of this simplistic exploration approach and provide a lot of interesting quests to go on. Like one of the most interesting ones I remember, which I failed at completely, was you're like climbing this tower full of monsters, and I forget exactly what happens, but you get up to the top, and then you have to fight this. You ram this giant, completely annihilated me.
Is that the Titan flute?
Yes, it was.
Actually, I ended up doing that twice because for some reason it didn't count as finished when I beat the boss and I exited the tower, and I had to go back in. No, I got some really nice attacks off of him the second time.
I was completely unprepared for that. Like, I used up all weapon durability, everything I had, and I basically lost the war of attrition and could not beat that boss.
Oh, I've been very careful about repairing all of my stuff as soon as it gets down to about 10 durability.
Yes, that is very important. Now, your weapons will degrade, and you need to repair them.
Mm-hmm. And more annoyingly, once they hit 0, you can't repair them anymore.
Yes.
But you can use them as raw materials to make new nice, especially since the new weapons don't cost you anything.
Yes.
Nice.
So maybe we should talk about comboing for a second.
Okay, so yeah. Oh, well, here's the fun part. You can have up to 8 people in a party, but you get 5 actions per round of combat. And that could be the one person attacking 5 times in a row. It could be any combination of people attacking for up to 5 times.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
I like
And
being able to actually use all your party members.
And this way also it's if you have a situation where where you want to limit exposure of certain characters to danger, you can just put one tank character out there to soak it all up for a round.
And I've done that often.
Or like in the current case where I'm facing off against a bunch of undead, and I have one character who has some really nice martial arts techniques, I'm just going to put him out there for 5 times and have him just take out the entire group. And missed it. Okay, I've got about 90% accuracy when it comes to hitting the good attacks now. That's nice.
Nice. So what's cool about comboing is you combo these attacks together. They do a lot more damage, but it's not guaranteed. Like I forget, you like press a button to start a combo, right? I'm trying to remember the exact. It's been a little while since I played the game. Yes.
And unfortunately, there's also a chance that an enemy might get in the way, and you'll end up comboing with the enemy.
That's right. And increasing the power of their attack.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a risk-reward thing. Which is why if you can figure out how to do it, is why you want to get magic in the game, as that's a lot easier to accomplish combos with. I think because, if I remember right, they're a lot slower, so they're more likely to happen after the enemy attacks, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never been able to figure out the exact thing with speed of attack.
Yeah, it's very confusing. Like a lot of things.
I'm still trying to figure out how to get magic. I'm just not really bothering with this particular run through.
Yeah.
Because Ventus is not the biggest magic user.
Yeah, magic
user party apparently.
Magic is really difficult to figure out. Like I watched I think it was like 3 or 4 tutorial videos that somebody did on YouTube just about the magic system. Went into the game, got ready to do it, and had to go back because I was completely lost. Even though I went and played immediately after watching these videos. Because you have to, when you finish a quest, each of your characters have I don't know what exactly to call this, but each characters have like a board with like certain bonuses on it.
Yeah, the panel bonus.
Yes,
and there's 7 spots on it. Yeah,
and you have to place a new one after. Right, it is required to place one at the end of each quest.
It is required.
So
regardless of if that's a good idea or not.
So there's different.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
There's different ways to like combo and really power up your character, and which can be completely ruined if you have because there's different ones that you'll get at the end of a quest, and you might not be able to keep whatever combo you have on a character's board. And were you going to say something about the boards?
I was going to say it's best to keep one spot open as a junk square, just to keep switching out whenever.
Yes. But I was going to say, at the end of some of these quests, you might get one of these, I think it's called like a magic tablet.
Yeah, I just got one off of a regular battle about 5 minutes ago. Yeah, I was quite surprised. That means I've got 3 now, and I have no idea what to do with them.
So you have to basically equip this on a character. That's step number 1. And then what I don't think is ever really explained in the game is you have to get certain kinds of weapons that I guess already have like magic attacks on them, which you then need to use in a battle. Yes, which you then need to use in a battle. And then after doing that, when you win a battle, you'll get the option to put points towards different magic spells from that tablet. And eventually I think it takes a while. You learn magic off of that.
Mhm.
But there's got
I-
to be the most convoluted way to learn magic in an RPG.
yes.
And obviously, if you don't really understand the comboing system, the magic spells actually don't do as much damage as your weapon attacks. So, if you don't understand that they're better for combos, you'll wonder why you just spent all that time getting magic.
hmm And
This
since,
game really
at
needed
least since
lots of
healing,
tutorials.
oh yes, it's, since healing is not necessarily the most, not as important in battle as it is with most games, um, you can actually get by without magic quite a lot.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
This
Oh,
game.
he's already putting himself to sleep talking about it. Holy cow!
Overall, I would like to disagree about the graphics. I really do like a lot of the character and monster designs for battle, especially
I
when they
do-
go
I
in
do
close
as
up
well.
for attack. They have some really fluid motion for some of these monsters, and it just looks really nice. I don't like the character portraits nearly as much, especially since every time I go to town, I have to see Ventus grinning like a maniac. I really don't like the stupid grin on his face. Yeah. Plus, I've played through so many games these days with character portraits. I would really like to see some changing portraits.
Yes,
They're static.
Yeah,
that's starting to show up a bit.
that happens in this day. I was playing a newer game that they just use static portraits. I'm like, come on now, this is a Blu-ray disc, man. You can afford some different pictures on there.
Wow. Well,
When I
Vita version-
reviewed Metal Max, I was going to say when I reviewed Metal Max 3, I made a specific point of saying that this game does not use character portraits, and this is a good thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Another reason to be sad about not having that game in English.
Yes.
I was going to say, for the Vita version of Disgaea 3, they actually went back and redid all the character portraits in that to make them not static, which is the nicest
Nice.
touch in the game, since they left all the original kind of ugly sprites from the original version in there.
I don't know. Maybe I was expecting too much because I'm used to Square Enix, Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X was one of the first games I played, and I think that came out before Unlimited Saga. I'm not sure. And to this day, I can play Final Fantasy X. It is so gorgeous, not only from an artistic standpoint, in my opinion, but from the technical standpoint. For an early PlayStation 2 game, it totally blew the ball out of the park. But Unlimited Saga, in the combats and stuff, I'm expecting Square Enix, and I didn't get Square Enix. That's just
No,
I
what
think
you got was Kawazu.
Yes.
yeah, I like.
Oh,
I said before though, I do like the character designs and stuff. I do like the artwork. It was just I don't know, the way it kind of all pulls together with some 3D and 2D graphics kind of mixed together. Yeah, it is fluid for 2D graphics compared, especially when we're used to seeing those things that are just like where you just see two 2D characters fighting and they don't even move. They just flash or something, and you don't get that here. They actually, the enemies are flapping their wings and stuff, and I mean that's pretty cool. It wasn't after playing like something like Final Fantasy X or something. It just maybe my expectations were a little too high when I saw that square sticker on the front.
I wonder what the actual budget for Unlimited Saga was.
It wasn't unlimited, I can tell you that. Sorry, couldn't help myself.
Well,
I know
from what
the
I
music
can
budget must have been really nice.
yeah, I was just listening to the music while you guys were talking. It's like, wow, this is amazingly good music in this game. Like, that was where all the budget went. It made helping Kawazu make this amazing. Not Kawazu, I mean Hamasu was the composer. Like, he just knocked it out of the ballpark with this one, the same he did with Saga Frontier 2. It's so great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have no complaints about the music. Fantastic.
Yeah, but I do like the character design. That's pretty cool. I'm looking through some pictures right now. Still like it. So awesome music. Anything else y'all can think about?
I really, really wish it had a manual about 5 times the size it came with.
Now, let's assume that the manual was there, or that the person buying this game had a few hours to read through the facts. Um, is it a good game, or is it too complicated for its own good, or is it not balanced well because it has too many mechanics, or what?
Well, it's definitely too complicated for its own good, but it's kind of a case of if you get a handle on it, it actually isn't that hard to manipulate everything. Yeah.
But does that make it fun?
Yes.
Yes, actually.
Eventually you can extract some fun from this game. And, I think for people, especially for people that play like tabletop RPGs, I think they might enjoy the way this game plays. It's kind of just nice and simple RPG exploration. No, ridiculous graphics. Just straight down to the core RPG.
And I guess for me, my frustration was that I came to it with that approach. I mean, I'm totally pen and paper. I knew that it was abstract, and I knew a lot of that stuff kind of going in. And in fact, that the reasons why some of the reasons that people were bashing against it were motivators for me to give it at least a good shot, because you talk about pen and paper, you're right up my alley. You talk about abstract walking dungeons, having things described to you, tell me what skills I have to use, building up a balanced team with different skills, because you're going to be facing all these situations. Those are things that appeal to me. I even sort of like complicated systems. You don't get into a game like D&D without having that trait or quality. But maybe because I didn't have like you said, it'd been nice to have some tutorials. Maybe because you're right, there was no tutorials, and maybe that's where I just totally got lost, because I don't remember spending time with facts, and I do tend to have the tendency that if you don't explain to me and it's not in the instruction book, I'm not going to take the time to look it up online. So
yeah, that was probably your issue right there, because manual was singularly uninformative.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of...
Yeah, it's the need to get information about the game on GameFAQs seems to be kind of a unifying theme for all of the SaGa series, if you ask me. We kind of get to that when we get to the next game, but...
Yeah, but none of the games are quite as bad as this one.
This one's really impenetrable sometimes.
Yeah, and that's kind of the sad part about this game, is you can have fun with it. It's actually pretty cheap to get the game.
You have to learn how first.
Yeah, but the game itself and the manual, nothing there helps you do that, and that's probably what turned off probably turned off a lot of people that may have gotten some enjoyment out of this game.
Now, if you want to have all the fun that Unlimited SaGa can give you, without the actual, you guys are laughing, you already know it's coming, without the actual, if you want to see the really cool animations we've been talking about in battle, the 2D, the pretty 2D graphics and the character designs, listen to some of the awesome music, and see the game in motion without actually having to jump through 1,800 hoops and 20, hours of FAQs, you can simply go on to youtube.com, search for Let's Play Unlimited SaGa, and let somebody else do it for you.
I'm sure that's a fair and balanced account of everything in this game.
I got like up to 28 episodes of 10 minutes each of Let's Play Unlimited SaGa. The 2D graphics are pretty, though, I will say. Yeah, that part, the 2D part's pretty. It's the 3D that's surrounding it. That it would have been cool if the whole thing was 2D, I think. That would have been awesome. I always say that, we could use more 2D graphics.
And again, I'm disagreeing with you on the 3D graphics. But, well.
They really, the textures and everything are just really bland compared to what you would see in normal Square Enix effort. But the 2D graphics are better than I remember them being. I mean, I didn't give the 2D graphics. The characters, when they're fighting and stuff, that is more pretty in motion. That is pretty.
Yeah.
I think the graphics are fine. I think the biggest issue with the game is they decide to use the R3 button. That really, I really can't get off that.
Wow, the R3 button. How many games use
I
that guy?
Yeah, anytime
Sure,
I
the first time I
was
played this game, the first time I played this game and saw the reference to the R3 button, is like, okay, wait a minute, which one's the R3 button again?
Yeah.
Check. Wait a moment. Oh, you mean the joystick? Those are buttons? Ah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like first, any game that uses the R3 button simply needs to trim back its controls a little. That's my general rule for control schemes in games. Use the R3 button.
Fair.
You've
it needs
got-
to clean it up.
You've got 10 other buttons, plus you've got the directional pad in the upper left that's often used for inventory management or whatever have you. So you literally have got 14 other buttons on the controller to use.
And it's a menu-based game.
And it's a menu-based game.
Menu-based game.
Yeah, just...
Why can't they just put a heal option up there somewhere?
Shit. Do you really need to use the R3? Yeah, ask yourself that before you do it. Do you really need to do this?
And I like this game, but I just cannot get over that fact.
Oh, wait, they got... Oh, wait, up to 30, 35... Wow, 51! Wow, they've gone on for... Wait, what's 50, 500 minutes? That's 6-7 hours so far. They just... Yeah, that's...
Actually enough to finish one of the...
66. Oh, we're up to 66. I wonder how many hours these guys put into it. Wow.
Quite a lot if they did all 7.
Well, I think the highest number I'm seeing is 67. So maybe they gave up after 8 hours or so. Oh, man. 68, 69, 70. Oh, 116! Woohoo! Wow. Yeah, someone's got a lot of time on their hands. You know how long it would take just to upload all these videos? Whew. Oh, God bless them. Alrighty. Well, any other thoughts before we close out on this title, gentlemen? Oh, wow.
Give it a try.
I'm
It's cheap.
both surprised and very happy that they still continued the SaGa series after this one came out.
Yeah, I think that this one single-handedly caused poor sales for the next one, at least in the U.S. Because
Yeah.
I know the next one still sold well in Japan.
Yeah,
the next,
for me,
the next one sold well because it was well, we'll get into this in a little bit, but not just a minor remake of a classic Super Nintendo game. It was a massive, like, wave the magic wand, make it all better, full on, full body contact remake. Oh man. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
me-
get into that in a moment.
Yeah, for me, Unlimited Saga just turned me off things enough that I didn't actually get the next game until only very recently, actually. But
Oh,
which I kind of
sad
regret
face.
because the next game is very different from Unlimited Saga. But yeah. Also, the advertising for Unlimited Saga was absolutely horrible. I can't believe they went that route.
Okay, well, fair enough. We'll take a few minutes to recuperate, and we'll be back to talk about a little song. While you listen to a song or something. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We are ready to talk about Romancing SaGa, or or at least its enhanced remake title for PlayStation 2, which I believe was called Romancing Saga here in the United States, but also called Romancing Saga Minstrel Song somewhere else, maybe? Somewhere?
Japan.
In Japan. All right. This was developed by Square, published by Square Enix for the PlayStation 2 remake. That remake was released in North America on October 11, 2005. A single-player RPG experience rated E10, because we can't let our little 9-year-olds play these games. And this was distributed on a Wondrous DVD-ROM. And I'm just kind of a little surprised because, as I was mentioning before the cast, I've always said that next to maybe the computer, my favorite RPG console of choice is the PlayStation 2. I've got more games on the PlayStation 2 than any other console, the majority of those being role-playing games of some sort. And as such, I kind of pride myself on having a thorough collection and keeping up on everything that came, but somehow this one flew right over my head. I don't ever remember seeing this in the stores. I don't remember reading reviews on it, much less even playing it myself. So, wow, I think you guys need to take me to school.
Well, Mr. Baker,
Yes.
according to Miss Marcello, this might just be your favorite game of all time.
Uh-oh.
Is that accurate?
Well, let's put it this way. So back in 2005, I was walking through the media center at Yodobashi Camera, and I saw this video coming up on the screen, and I was like, okay, it looks nice. Okay, Big Demon looks nice. And then I saw the light bulb go off over somebody's head, and they unleashed holy fury on the thing. And I realized, oh, this is Romancing Saga. And then 4 months later, I bought the game and my first PlayStation 2 at the same time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So yeah, it was definitely good enough for it to be a system seller for me. How about that?
I'll take that as a statement of effusive praise for it.
Yes. But also, I really liked the original series on the Super Nintendo. Not so much the original version of this game on the Super Nintendo, because that was a buggy terror of missing plot material. But the second and third games in the series I really liked, and I really wanted to see what they could do if they were given the chance to finish the first game in the series, or first game in that trilogy.
I think you're going to be able to tell us about the Super Famicom ones a little bit
Okay,
later.
let's start with the Super Famicom, just to give some perspective here.
Okay.
The Super Famicom version was produced with the first generation of Super Nintendo cartridges with limited memory. So Kawazu was not able to put everything into the game that he wanted to. So the plot revolved around this ancient god of destruction and how his followers wanted to resurrect him by finding these 10 jewels that his power had been trapped inside. But in the Super Famicom version, 3 of these jewels were not actually in the game. They had to cut out almost 30% of the game's material because of size limitations, and they couldn't get permission to use the higher capacity cartridge. They couldn't get permission from Nintendo.
Well, that sounds very much like Nintendo policy.
Yep. And plus, they were trying all these other really odd, novel things with the game structure, like for example, with weapons, each weapon had up to 4 attacks associated with it, but you had to keep using the weapon over and over again to unlock these attacks. However, as soon as you unequipped the weapon, you lost the attacks.
Ooh.
Even if you put the thing back on right afterwards. So yeah, there were plenty of issues. Also, this is one of the first games oldest games I've ever seen that had enemy sprites on the game map tracking you down. And they didn't quite get this right either because all of the enemy sprites would lock onto your location and start converging on you after about a minute. So you would enter into an area, you'd be walking along, and suddenly you would see this wall of monsters coming straight at you.
I always like getting beaten to a pulp with no chance to survive, don't you?
Pretty much, yeah. So this game had lots of interesting ideas. They weren't quite sure what to do with a lot of them yet, and then they got a chance to make it better for PlayStation 2. A lot better. A lot better. Okay. Okay, Wheel?
Tell us how.
Oh, so. Oh, okay, well, they I mean, it's just things like, I mean, a lot of this is stuff that they introduced incrementally for the rest of the series, like having each type of enemy sprite have its own movement patterns, its own way of reacting to the player's presence, or not reacting, as the case may be.
Yeah,
But
all
they
the
also
different enemies
added,
have very different behaviors in Romancing Saga, which make it kind of tricky to dodge sometimes, easier to dodge than other ones. It's kind of an interesting game you have to play with them. Trying to figure out,
yeah,
oh, that's a plant, you need to run from it because it'll run straight at you, and then we want curve to follow you and stuff like that.
yeah. Also, the Romancing Saga for PlayStation 2 added field skills, which hadn't been present in any of the other games.
I think
And
it's
so
inspired by
things
something
like,
from-
so you could use things like quiet walking to avoid enemies with good hearing, like plants, for some reason. Or you could, I mean, there were different skills that would affect specific enemy types that would help you avoid them better.
yeah,
And apparently, oh yeah, yes, Nathan, yeah.
just, except for I think fungus or something. Like there's one enemy type which you just can't avoid with those skills, but like everything else you can like use your the various covert skills to avoid, sneaking or avoiding being seen or hurt.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically the game which tried to, at the time, be the summation of all the previous Saga games, taking bits and pieces from all the previous ones to varying degrees. And it kind of rather works as that. It even takes some of the good stuff from Limited Saga and, by taking it out of Limited Saga, it just makes it better in its own way. So I kind of like the game as a whole because of that.
Yeah. Plus, they actually had a chance to use almost the entire story. I think there was only one thing that they cut out from the Super Nintendo release, and that was a minor side character for one of the main, actually from the smallest of the main plot lines.
Which character plot?
There was a minor party member who could join Barbara, the dancer's party, and she had a small amount of story attached to her. And I mean, you could only get this character as Barbara in the original game, and she was so minor that they cut her out of the PlayStation remake. And I think that was the only thing that they actually cut.
Huh.
They mostly added stuff and added
Lots
and
of
added
stuff,
and
from what I
added.
can gather.
Yeah, it's like we're talking about how Unlimited Saga has Dungeons and Dragons type styling to it. Well, Romancing Saga, it really feels like this was Kawazu's personal D&D campaign at one point, because he wrote out an entire mythology behind this game, and a lot of it is only referenced in specific high-level equipment. It says like Gauntlet of such and such, and you read in the description such and such was the old goddess of love, and so he has this backstory involving this titanic struggle between the original gods of the world and the goddess of darkness and evil, and how in the middle of this great battle, the goddess took her sword and she made a cut across one of her hands and created the god of light to be an ally for her. Which, you know the expression, light is the left hand of darkness? Have anybody heard that one?
No.
No?
Not really.
It's a Buddhist saying. It was also the title of the Ursula K. Le Guin novel. But yeah, that was a reference to that. So she cut her left hand and created the god of light, and the god of light turned on her and helped defeat the goddess, killed her, broke her body into bits, but the world was so badly damaged that the rest of the gods just finally gave up on it. They moved on. And the only gods to remain were the god of light and the goddess of the earth, who got married and had an entire new generation of gods, eventually. And so the actual plot starts about 1,000 years before the game starts, where the three biggest parts of the goddess of darkness that fell to earth regenerated as three separate deities. And so you had the god, you had the god of death.
God of death.
Just because Desu sounded really cool in Japanese, apparently. And then the Saruin.
Yep.
Saruin, god of destruction.
And the youngest sister, Shirok.
Yeah. Who I think
every time you start up the
Every time
you start up the game, you start a new character. You can talk to the minstrel, a character you find in any bar, and he'll kind of go over the story of what happens with Death, Sorrowing, and Shirok and the battle against them in kind of nice detail with a good narration and music and some pretty pictures.
Yeah, I was
I like
actually just watching that, and it's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
Obviously not
Yeah.
listening to it, but
Yeah. But yeah, this is a game with a lot of mythology behind it, and it really doesn't need all this mythology, but it's kind of cool that it's there, even. So.
yeah, I always like it when they do that with a game. Build in mythology, even if you don't necessarily need it, because, you know, being able to, kind of poke around and find all these little details, it makes the world feel a lot deeper and a lot more interesting. And you
and
can
I
cert
think. Go ahead.
it, and there'll certainly be a lot of instances where you're kind of not sure where to go and just kind of exploring the world. And I think those aspects really, really help out.
Yeah, and I think this game does it a bit better than some because a lot of the stuff you see actually has some amount of importance in the game. They talk about these crazy places and you can go to them. Right? They talk about this strange little side story which is kind of cute but otherwise not important, and suddenly it's actually telling the story of a recruitable side character and stuff like that. It's kind of cool.
Hmm. And one other thing I really liked that they did with the remake, in the original game, most of the towns were ridiculously generic looking, even the major ones. But they changed that for the remake, and so you have like these incredibly baroque Oriental style palaces on the lake, or this gigantic Teutonic fortress built into the side of a mountain, and they did not look nearly this good in the original game. And
I mean,
then there was, yeah,
they're kind of low budget in this game. It's not Final Fantasy X level graphics. It's cheaper, not as pretty, but it's still some pretty cool designs and cool concepts behind all of it.
Yeah, it's actually aged pretty well. I've been playing it on an HD TV, and although sometimes the locales look a little iffy, on the whole, it looks pretty nice.
hmm
Especially compared to a lot of the uh, lower budget games I've played on like PS3 and 360. It's got a good look to it, and it doesn't look terrible on an HD TV. I think a lot
but
of
yeah,
people
it's just
didn't. I think a lot of
mhm.
people complained about the character models, but I think they're pretty nice.
Yeah, they grow on you a little. I mean, it seems a little weird at first, but it kind of it's like just mixing a limited Saga and Saga Frontier and putting it into 3D and making everything look good. So, and
Yeah,
actually,
it's
exactly.
like they took the old style of character sprites from like even Final Fantasy VI and just translated that into a 3D character model. If you looked at I think somewhere on the site we used to have um, like experimental 3D models for a lot of the Final Fantasy VI characters that they produced back before Final Fantasy VII.
Hmm.
And so you had a character model for Locke, another one for Celeste, and another one for Terra, and they looked a lot like the Romancing Saga characters in body proportion, with the big head and the smaller body.
Hmm. Yeah.
also this is probably a random comparison, but oddly enough, when I first played Xenoblade, the models in that rather strongly reminded me of the Romancing Saga models for some reason. Less super deformed style, but still, the way they are built and shaded and such reminded me very much of it.
I can see that actually a little bit.
Hmm.
Kind of have similar coloring.
And of course, then there's also the actual character art that you find in the manual or a lot of the promotional stuff that looks really beautiful. I'm a really big fan of the character design artist for this series.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the good things they took from Limited Saga is they have cool watercolor designs and detailed character designs that are colorful and interesting.
No, I mean the actual character art. I mean that's some holdover from the Super Nintendo days, actually.
I thought they
The very
redesigned all the
baroque.
characters. I thought they redesigned almost all the characters
Yeah,
from
but
between
a lot
SVS
of
and
them still look the same, or they look. It's the same artist.
I see.
Hmm. Okay. Well, what else would you like to say about this story? Kind of glazed over that a little
Well,
bit.
basically, there's a bunch of different main characters. There's 8 in this game, 4 male, 4 female, and the basic story is that all of them have their own ways they start off in their story. Some are very simplistic, like Barbara is a dancer. She's just out in the frontier. She has a dance, and so the mysterious minstrel just gives her one of these items, the Fate Stones, and thus she sets herself on her journey. basically there's the 10 objects, the Fate Stones, and 8 heroes. And 8 heroes just basically go out with their own origin stories. Are basically asked to find the Fate Stones in kind of roundabout way on the goal to stop the 3 minions of Sorrowing and the evil gods of destruction, Sorrowing himself. And then they venture around until you can face Sorrowing in battle and defeat him, and that's the end of the game. Nothing too deep, but a lot of interesting side stories along the way.
A lot of it starts, they all start out in really different ways. Like Albert, the prince, his story starts out when one of the minions leads a full-on assault on his family castle and wrecks the place, and he barely escapes with his life. And another character named Claudia, her original quest has nothing to do with the Fate Stones as far as or at first glance, because she's asked to find a cure for the king's disease, for his illness.
Is that just a side story? It's actually mandatory for hers.
It's actually mandatory for her, and as it turns out, it involves getting the Moonstone.
And it's also probably the hardest quest in the entire game, other than maybe getting the Jewel Beast defeated. But yeah, it's not easy to do on your first try.
Nah. I know I always found Gray's harder because of the item synth requirements. Yeah.
Yeah, I did Gray's quest, doing both the sword. I got his sword, did the King's Illness, and took on the Jewel Beast in his quest, and that was not easy, but it was a lot of fun, and I really liked the game because of how fun that could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Romancing SaGa is one of those games where theoretically you can do everything theoretically you can do most of it in one run. There's some things that require a New Game Plus once or twice in order to access, but actually doing everything in one run is...
Yeah, that's a doozy. Okay, wait, let's get the story done first, then I'll explain why it's a doozy. But there's few other cool characters, like there's Hawk, who's a pirate. You start off at the beginning of his adventure pirating, then the other pirates kind of get together and kick him out because they hate him, because there's an evil pirate and he's a good pirate, and, well, kind of. He's actually got the best character at getting the evil ending, I think. Or, yeah, no, maybe that's actually Gray, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
And then that starts him off in his adventure. Let's see here. Gray's just out fighting on an island full of dinosaurs and samurai, just collecting treasure and having fun. There's Jamil the thief, his origin story involves cross-dressing, and it's a lot of fun. Then there's Aisha, the girl whose story involves her getting kidnapped and being rescued from being useless, which is rather opposite from the more powerful characters. Who am I forgetting?
There's Barbara the dancer. There's Sif, who's this barbarian Valkyrie from the southern Icelands, and she rescues Albert when the ship he's on crashes into the fjord. Who else is there? We're missing one. Okay, no, we've done Gray, Claudia, Hawk, Sif, Jamal, whatever. Aisha, Albert, and Barbara. Okay, never mind. We've done all 8.
Okay, yeah, that's all of them.
It's a really interesting mixed group, and a very interesting mixed selection of kingdoms in this game too. You have an island covered in jungles and full of lizard people, and then you have another island that has dinosaurs and a pseudo Okinawa civilization, and then you have one area that looks like it's based off of the Byzantine Empire, another one that's like Renaissance Italy, another one that's pseudo-Teutonic, and then one that's...
Then you've got the frontier on the west.
And then the frontier.
Which is just a bunch of shacks. And a bunch of shacks that's basically doomed to get completely wiped out by a super powerful monster. Sucks to be that.
If you don't manage to do that set of quests quickly enough, it's possible to get rid of the jewel beast that wakes up. It's just really hard.
You pretty much need a dedicated go through just to that, I think.
Yeah, you have to know what you're doing in order to defeat the jewel beast before it actually wakes up. In which case, jewel beast... Oh, I can't remember exactly what this thing looks like. I'm remembering a giant, orange, diamond-studded toad. Is that about what it looks like?
Basically sums it up. That has an attack which you can basically you'll shot the entire party no matter how strong you are.
Yep. And there are 3 towns on the frontier, and it systematically takes out all 3. Walk into one town, and then suddenly, there's a giant, ugly really, really, really giant toad sitting in the middle of what used to be this town. Oh boy.
Yep.
Yep.
The first time I ever saw it is just in the middle of the last town it destroyed. It's like, wow, I completely missed on the entire frontier.
Yep.
Well, I tell you what, looking at some movies of the game while y'all were talking. Well, I tell you what, I was bragging about how the 2D how I like the 2D character sprites and animation in Unlimited Saga. Was that Unlimited Saga? I get these things so mixed up.
Yes.
Looking at the ones in this game, it's like they captured that exact same feel, but in like the characters are done in 3D. They're not 2D sprites. They're totally 3D, but they capture that 2D artistic feel to them. They do have, like you said, the bigger heads, which you would definitely harkens back to those 16-bit RPG days of Final Fantasy IV and the such. So that's either a hit or miss depending on your own preference there. I think it's kind of cute. But yeah, they definitely have the style is really done really nicely. When they were running around on the field, that looked pretty good too. Unfortunately, the 3 videos that GameSpot has features them in rather unflattering combat environments, because the environments themselves still look kind of very, very bland, but that might just be because I couldn't find very many videos, so it may just be that they just happened to pick some, boring environments like the snowfield. Well, one of them, they're just in this void, which I guess could be a boss fight or something, but it looks completely voidish. The other ones are okay, the PlayStation 2, I guess. But the character and the monster sprites, I mean, they got like that 2D fluid animation prettiness thing going on to them, even though they're 3D. So that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. If you want to talk about cool enemies, this game has definitely quite a few. Like, if you can find a video from the battle against the 4 dragons, that'd be a good one, because those things are just gigantic and impressive looking, and a lot of cool to watch fight.
Or one of the minion battles, like the minion battle in front of the Two Moon Temple.
Yeah,
that had a really cool introductory sequence and then the battle. And the minions battle music is one of my favorite tracks in the game.
Yeah, just any of basically the music in this game is great. It's very different than Unlimited Sagas. This is a different composer, Kenji Ito, than the previous two Saga games. He's actually they're reusing the composer from Saga Frontier, and it sounds great and exciting, and lots of electric guitar. And
Ito did the music for most of the series, and so he took a lot of the tracks from his original Romancing Saga composition, and then reworked them, and then got together his own rock band to do a lot of the tracks live recording, and I think the guitar soloist was given free rein at a couple points in the middle of the regular battle themes to just jam.
I mean,
and they just recorded it as it was.
Yeah, definitely the boss battle themes in this game are great. Either the song for fighting the 3 minions, which I can never quite remember the name of. There's the battle against the 4 dragons, the written invitation to death, the battle against the god of death, is a really cool theme, even though I never actually heard it in game. And the final battle theme against Sorrowing is just crazy good. It's just all kinds of epic, awesome rock music for this game.
I'd say this game is one of the in the West, one of the most underrated gems on the system.
It's one of the most unknown gems on this system.
It's true.
I sit around reading reviews. I mean, when I'm bored and stuff. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I joined RPGamer, because I spent so much time reading all the reviews.
Isn't this the game someone on our forums a while back had a problem with walking out to fight a dinosaur and getting immediately creamed?
Yeah, don't walk up to dinosaurs.
Yeah. If you start as Gray, then you can get yourself creamed by a dinosaur really early in the game. You don't mess with the dinosaurs.
This game is kind of the old school approach of it doesn't hold your hand, so you can wander into areas you probably shouldn't be in yet. Like one time I wandered onto a boat in the middle of a lake and got destroyed by a giant octopus or something.
Oh, the Crystal Lake Temple. I remember that thing. That was fun. Yeah.
So,
or getting into a fight against an impressively powerful mummy really early in the game.
Yeah, but don't people usually complain about Japanese RPGs being too easy and too hand-holdy?
These people
Yeah,
have
but
not
that's
played
until they
Romancing
have to
Saga.
play the opposite, and then they
And then they're like,
realize, oh no, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, well, this game could use some more explanation. Certainly, the game really needed to explain its event rank system a heck of a lot better than it did, because that's kind of key, and what I mentioned a bit earlier. Because this game, just as you fight battles, there's this ever small chance that something called event rank will progress. And just when this happens, new quests open up and old quests close. So basically, as you go through the game and fighting battles, things change in the game world, which, if you're not prepared for this and don't understand it, can be really confusing and can be really problematic. You can miss out on all kinds of key things, or fail the quest you're on even. And so yeah, it's something you really absolutely need to pay attention to, and the game doesn't really tell you need to, and it's actually really hard to pay attention to this at times. Unless you have a fat guiding, even then it can be tricky. So yeah, be careful with that.
Okay. Well, wow. Color me impressed to find out about this little gym that's out there. Let's see here. Our good friends at eBay says that you can get this all the way from, let's see, one guy selling it with the disc only for $8 plus shipping and handling, and that goes all the way up into the mid-30s or so if you want it quote-unquote brand new and in the shrink wrap. I often wonder if people selling like a 10-year-old game still in the shrink wrap. Well, it's not 10 years old. I guess it's like 7 years old. If they just didn't take some saran wrap and just use a hairdryer to make it look. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, you got a full. Depending on most of the used copies are about 15 in the ballpark, about 15 to $20. So,
I got this game new for $20 a week after it came out, which was kind of which was kind of depressing, actually.
Weird.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't.
It does
think
mean that the Square Enix surcharge went away.
Well, I think it went back up eventually, but...
Well, I think part of the problem is that, I mean, meta wasn't nice to it. It's got a 56 meta. I have to call it like I see it. 23 Metacritic reviews for, I'm sorry, 58. And but on GameSpot's website, I like to use that for user scores. That one's at 76. So people who actually played the game seem to enjoy it. 76 is pretty good, especially given its predecessor. I think maybe that's yeah. Interesting. So I think it sounds like you guys really had fun with it.
Yeah, it took me a little while to get into, and this is definitely a game where it's basically designed that you're going to have a failed first run that you're going to abandon like near the end of. It literally seems to build itself around this idea that you're going to fail your first attempt and then go through and play the game after reading some facts and do it better. It's kind of weird that way, but that's how it is. And so yeah,
I don't know. I beat him I beat Sauri my first time through, but I didn't go for the extra challenge.
Well, you're also a veteran of the saga.
Yeah. Oh, but get this, guys. In the final dungeon, you can actually sacrifice the fate stones to make Sauri more powerful, and then fight him.
Yeah, and if you have more, and if you actually fail fate stone quests, he'll become more powerful. The first time through the game, he's actually locked to being his weakest difficulty, but after that, I hear 10 fate stone Saruing is extremely hard.
Yeah, he actually may edge out the egg from Saga Frontier 2 as the hardest final boss in the series, possibly.
Now, speaking of the egg, I think that this game actually references the egg in various ways, because it has a series of weapons that are all inspired by the final bosses of previous games. But I think they kind of mixed together the egg and the Death Eclipse from Romancing Saga 3, I think. I'm a little confused why.
I don't know. That could just be an issue with the translation.
Possibly. I know it references the heroes from Romancing Saga 2. I'm not sure what else.
This game has a pretty decent translation, which is surprising considering I doubt they were given a lot of time or budget.
Yeah, and
especially
it's got voice acting for every line.
How non-linear the thing is.
Yeah, that's also true. The voice acting's pretty good. Nothing exceptional, but nothing, that's going to grate your ears out, which is nice.
Yeah, nothing offensive.
Yeah, a few weird moments, like an underground area where everyone will say the same thing and every character has a different voice, which they start sounding weird after a while, and they have this weirdest way of saying it for each character.
Like Hail Warrior of Nisa or something like that.
Yeah, Warrior of Nisa.
It sounded weird in Japanese too.
Okay. Wow. Well, definitely everyone should go and check that out. Wow. Like I said, I'm impressed. You guys have taken me to school today, so that's awesome. All right.
Have you played this game, Phil?
I haven't even know. I didn't know about it before you started talking about it tonight. I didn't even know it. That's why I'm so surprised because, like I said, aside from the computer, the PlayStation 2 is my favorite console, and I kind of pride myself on knowing all the games on there. And yeah, that one I never knew they had a Romanza and SaGa remake on the PlayStation 2, and that it was actually good. So, and I think a little bit has to do with it. I think the reason why I also kind of looked it up is I have this really bad tendency of not reading reviews if the meta's like in the sub 50 range, you just kind of skip those guys. So, that's a shame. But if I must have missed like an RPGamer review. I usually try to read all those, even the bad ones. Somehow I just missed this guy. So, cool beans. Well, I will go. What's that?
I was going to say, let's note what the official RPGamer review title is for this game. This is not Unlimited SaGa.
So true.
So true. Well, I will definitely get my order in for my eBay copy here very shortly. And I recommend that some of our listeners do the same if they're into retro gaming, because this looks like a really cool little retro game to get into. Absolutely. I mean, this is classic JRPG stuff. Looks good. Looks like it plays good, especially if you put a little time into it. So that looks. It just from all accounts, listening to you guys talk, looking at what I'm seeing on here, it seems like a much easier recommend than Unlimited SaGa. So good job, guys. We'll be right back after these messages, after I make some purchases. And we'll wrap this up tonight with the final lap. I guess I forgot that we're actually doing an import corner tonight. So no final lap just yet. We're going to do an import corner because I guess there's some other Romancing SaGa games that never made it here stateside. How rude. So, who's going to take this ball and run with it?
Well, who here has actually played these games?
Not me.
I have a little bit. I'm not going to say how.
Various versions that I'm not going to talk about either. Yeah, I've played 3.
I've played 1 and 3. Not really any of 2.
Well, I know Mr. Baker did a retro review for 2, so I think he's qualified to talk about that game.
Yeah, I've definitely played through the game enough times at this point. Okay, so remember all the stuff we said about the mythology and Romancing SaGa? They didn't really bother with that as much for any other game in the series, unfortunately, but Romancing SaGa 2 has an interesting backstory to start with. So, unknown amount of time in the past, literally all hell broke loose. This ancient civilization did some weird magic thing that's never quite explained, but they were apparently trying to ascend to a higher level of reality, and instead they opened up a hell mouth by accident.
Whoops.
Yes, whoops. And this is one of the central parts of the plot. In fact, most of the actual game plot goes into giving backstory involving this event. And so the 7 greatest heroes of the ancient times came together and they just beat the demons back, killed everything in sight, pushed the forces of evil back through the Hellmouth, and then the Hellmouth was closed. Unfortunately, at the time there was some political disagreement as to how best to continue, because the politicians still wanted to continue with the dimensional magic experiments and try to ascend to a higher plane, and the 7 heroes were very, very obviously against anything of the sort because they didn't want to have to clean up any more messes. And so when they closed the Hellmouth, the politicians conveniently made sure that the heroes were on the wrong side when it happened.
Yeah, don't trust the politician.
Yeah. However, we don't really find this out for quite a while into the game. All that's known at the start of the game is that the 7 heroes defeated the demons, that they drove back the forces of darkness, and then that they were lost in the final battle. But that from there on, there was a kind of a legend, and I think it's based off of the 7 Sleepers legend from Europe, where in a time of crisis, the 7 heroes would return to the land. And that happens at the very start of the game. The 7 heroes return in a time of crisis. Unfortunately, they're the crisis, because apparently they were just so badass that when they realized that they were locked in hell, that they'd been betrayed, they conquered hell. And then led a second invasion to get revenge on their former allies. Except it's been about 1,000 years or so in the real world, so they don't know where to find their own people anymore. Or the ancient civilization actually managed to finally move on to another plane of reality. So they're doing their best to take out their frustrations on the continent while trying to find out what happened to their former comrades.
I imagine taking out their frustrations goes pretty well when they conquered hell.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting game. It's a generational game. So the actual player characters have almost no storyline. The storyline is very NPC oriented, and the 7 heroes actually get more story and more plot to them than anybody else. So, yeah.
Sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah. It's still largely non-linear, but it's more sectionalized. So one region will have its own set of stories, and another region will have a different set of stories. It's not as mixed up and hard to follow as Romancing SaGa was, and there aren't as many places where you can screw yourself over. There's 2 or 3, but it's not really possible. It's usually not possible to lock yourself out of a plot line. Usually. Hello?
So, why did we not get this awesome sounding game?
Blame it on
This was SNES.
Square. I have no idea.
Yeah, this is the SNES area. We didn't get a lot of cool games.
Yeah,
I mean, the game was published in 1992.
The year we did not get Final Fantasy V, remember?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And which is a shame, because it actually looks a lot better than Final Fantasy V in a lot of respects. Like, Final Fantasy V was still using the super deformed sprites on the game map and things like that. And in this game, the battle sprites are used for everything, for the characters. So it
kind of like Final Fantasy.
There's a much more consistent look to it throughout.
So yeah, that does sound like 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And came out well before 6.
Yeah. It's got more of Final Fantasy IV's color palette with some things that didn't happen until Final Fantasy VI in terms of sprite use. And things like the monsters. I mean, there's definite like families of monsters, but they'll do things like they won't just palette swap a monster. They'll switch the direction it's facing. They'll switch equipment. They'll basically Photoshop bits of different monsters together into a new form, and so you end up with a really, really wide variety of enemy types. And this isn't even going into the bosses, and some of the bosses are just insane. Like among the 7 heroes, you have this demonic goblin-like thing with a screaming shield that tries to bite you. The shield tries to bite you. There's this like pygmy mummy-looking guy who controls a giant marionette. There's this one character who's technically supposed to be a guy, but you can't tell by looking at him. And since you get a full frontal look at this guy, you can't tell by looking at him. But he's half butterfly now. And that particular enemy would probably have to have been altered significantly to get past Nintendo's no religious references rule. because in its most of the 7 heroes had multiple forms depending on how far along in the game you'd progressed when you actually got to them. So the Wagnus, the butterfly guy's second form, included a flaming alpha and omega sign on each wing, a crown of thorns, and he was crying blood.
Oh.
Yes, from the company that made the spell holy be changed to white. I don't think that would have flown.
Or Pearl. Don't forget Pearl. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Pearl.
Methinks you are right that Nintendo would not have let that pass.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not quite as big an issue as like Shin Megami Tensei would have been, but yeah, you can laugh here.
Wouldn't they have to completely alter Shin Megami Tensei to even have brought it over here?
I don't even know how much you could alter it.
Yeah.
But continuing on, I said a lot of this in my review of it about 2 years ago, but for Romancing Saga, there were a lot of firsts in this game. This was the first game to have the light bulb mechanic, where characters learned attacks in mid-battle. There was every time a character attacked with a weapon, there was a small chance based on the character's skill level, the current battle rank level, and the enemy's level, that you would learn a new skill. And it was always, it usually happened at the best possible time against some massive boss, but you just see a little light bulb go on and then suddenly, massive damage. So which was always good. And then there was also, like Romancing Saga, the first had a positioning system, but Romancing Saga 2 actually had a group formation system where each formation had different bonuses or a specific turn order, or it would concentrate most of the enemy attacks on one character, which is good because this game also had a lot of counter-attack options. So it was a lot of fun to play with this, and there was, I can't remember how many character classes were there, maybe close to 40 character classes.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and each character class cycled through a series of 8 different specific characters, each one with their own name and their own specific stats, but they would inherit skill levels as each generation progressed. So you were always guaranteed to have stronger characters later in the game, even if you had never actually used that character class before.
I want this game in English.
Yeah, I want to see it get a remake.
Remake.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the very last paragraph in my review. I said that if and when this game is announced for a remake, I am buying that game. I don't care if I don't not have the system to play that game. I'm going to buy the system as well.
Okay, the Saga 3 remake came out when?
While I'm also praying that it's going to be for PlayStation 3 or 3DS. If it's for Vita, screw it, I'm getting a Vita.
I think we can guarantee it will not be for 360.
Yeah, that kind of goes without saying.
And hopefully not a random DS game that we would then certainly never get over here.
And it probably won't be for Wii U either.
Probably not.
Well, it's been all quiet on the Saga front for a little while. Maybe that'll change.
Yeah, I was just noticing how they announced the Saga 2 and Saga 3 remakes for the 20th anniversaries of each game, and Romancing Saga 2's 20th anniversary would be about this year.
Oh.
So I've been holding my breath every time I buy a Famitsu magazine for the last year. Hoping, come on, this time, let it be. No, not now. Oh.
Well,
don't be a cell phone remake. Don't be a cell phone remake.
Yeah,
there's a cell phone port.
Wish list.
That's just a port. And
well, that leaves us.
Remakes have been so massive that I mean, like Final Fantasy Legend 3's remake is a complete game experience.
Yes, it actually vastly improved upon the original, and don't ask for Max Storm's opinion on that.
Though he'll give it if you ask.
That's why we aren't asking.
Good.
Well, that leaves just one Romancing Saga, doesn't it?
Romancing Saga 3.
Romancing Saga 3, which actually does have a translation patch of variable quality.
That's
Variable, it's very generous.
Yes, this is a very, very generous way to put it.
I think I saw a screenshot from it that looked like someone who did not speak English as his first or second language had been trying to translate it on behalf of someone who also did not speak English as his first language.
Translation would be a generous word.
No,
I said try.
translation. It's
I'll put it that way.
localization. Localization, that's the issue.
So I'm guessing that it's considerably easier to play this in Japanese then.
I mean, if you speak Japanese, yes, but yeah.
Well, I think I'd rather play it in Japanese and not bother to try and figure out the nuances than look at text that makes no sense whatsoever.
If it's not going to make any sense either way, might as well go with Japanese, yeah. It's formatted better.
Also, what the screens have told me is that this is one of those really good-looking Squaresoft games from the later Super Nintendo years.
Yeah, this one
looks-
is probably a little better than Final Fantasy VI when it comes to actual graphics.
Yeah, it's somewhere between Final Fantasy 6 and Chrono Trigger, though more 6 than Chrono Trigger. A little
Yeah,
cheaper than 6,
especially with the
but
character models.
it's cheaper, but looks quite good. I guess is the way I'd put it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the backstory for Romancing Saga 3 is about every 200 years or so, there's this major eclipse of the sun, and at that time, again, a portal to hell will open up, and the energies from this portal kill every infant being, no matter what species, on the planet.
Ooh.
So in case of humanity and anything with a life cycle resembling humanity's, every child of less than a year of age dies because of this eclipse. However, 400 years ago, one child survived. And this child grew up to become a leader known as the Demon King. And he assembled a great army, massive magical powers, and he assaulted the Hellmouth, and he just took that sucker out. And then 200 years later, when the eclipse happened again, the demons of hell were rather ticked off about this, and so they kept the thing open after the eclipse happened. And again, one child survived the eclipse, and he grew up to become a leader known as the Saint King. And he gathered his own forces, his own magical equipment, and he closed the Hellmouth that time. And so now, the current iteration, the eclipse happened about 16 years ago at the time the game starts. And again, demons are starting to run around. It's obvious that the Hell Gates are still open again, the Abyss Gates. And at this point, there's the surviving child actually there were 3 surviving children this time, and one of them is part of your starting party. But there's also these 12 items left over from the Demon King and Saint King's reigns that could be very useful. You don't even have to track these things down, but they're very, very nice items. But the entire point is you have to find and close the 4 Abyss Gates, Earth, Wind, Fire, and Water, and then take on the Master Gate, wherever it might be, and defeat the final boss is usually called the Destroyer, but the Japanese, the way it's written in Japanese would probably translate better as the one that destroys, if you want to be picky. But really cool battle. Really cool battle.
Well, since we have no formal translation of it, I think we can call it whatever we want. Within reason.
So I always refer to it as the one who destroys. Hakai Suramono.
That does sound more formal than simply destroyer, which makes me think of a naval vessel.
Yeah. Destroyer would be more like Hakaisha. So, it's 6 to 1, half dozen the other, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe Square will do us the favor of remaking it, and then we'll get an official translation, which we can pick over endlessly.
Mm-hmm. Again, one can hope.
Yeah, this game is really kind of cool in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So how does it play?
Very well. Again, it's a lot like Romancing Saga 2, where you have the set formations, you have the characters. The characters all have set stats, but their skill levels increase. And so its skill level is much more important than actual stats. even though stats help determine which weapons they're best at. Also, if you use a weapon attack enough times, that attack will be mastered, and then you can share it with other characters, which is very convenient. In Romancing Saga 2, you can only do that through a technique trainer one generation after you learn original attack. So it was a little more limited there.
Okay. Well, so you're...
Oh, and also, this game also allowed you to recruit anthropomorphic elephants, living snowmen, and walking, talking, boxing lobsters.
Okay, this game has to have a remake.
Oh,
I
also,
demand
this is a game which, from what I can gather, has a game where you can become a merchant and take over the world's economics. It can become the ultimate corporation in the world.
Yeah, that was one of the secondary games. I never got into that because that's one area where it's actually better to have the English translation, because the Japanese, I don't have the Japanese vocabulary to understand that particular part of the game. I don't know a lot of economics Japanese, so.
Nor would you ever have reason to unless you work in that area.
Or unless I have to translate trails in the sky, apparently. Remember, there was that one example of Japanese text from Trails in the Sky that got put into an interview on RPGamer last year, and my comment was it sounded like something that you would find in a high school economics textbook, and it actually was something from a high school economics textbook in the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess that's better than a college economics textbook, isn't it?
Well, it's about the same level of inscrutability when you get down to it. It's Japanese.
Yeah, fair enough.
Alrighty. Well, sounds exciting. And while everybody starts marching around their block, yelling, remake,
Saga,
remake,
SaGa.
remake. Yeah, remake. Everybody go out there right now, start marching around, start yelling out remake while we take a brief...
You better yell really loud because you need to be heard in Japan.
Yep. While we take a brief...
Call it Operation Saga Fall.
While we take a brief recess and come back with the final lap. Mr. Miki. I hear the forums are back up and working.
Based on empirical evidence, I think all of us can speak to, yes, that would appear to be the case.
Yeah, so everybody needs to go and write lots of comments about how much they love RPG Backtrack and how they're all rushing out to buy... what are we buying today? Romancing SaGa Remake on the PlayStation 2. Minstrel Song. Well, no songs in the... Don't search for Minstrel Song, though, when you go to eBay, because it won't pull up. It's the English version just is Romancing SaGa. So, yeah, check that out.
Oh, feel free to comment on Metal Max 3 as well. So.
Let's see here.
Which I had to put that one up myself, but understandable since I think that was the first item to get indexed after the forums crashed. So.
Hey, look, Famitsu gave it a 32 out of 40. Romancing SaGa. There you go.
Yeah,
Seems
but
low for
the Romancing SaGa. Which one? The remake or the original?
I believe that's the remake. It says PlayStation 2 version at the top, so I think that would be the remake. Yeah.
I can't quite remember what the Romancing SaGa 3 score was, though I did see it once, but it was on par with Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana. It had the exact same scores.
Let's see here. So, oh yeah. So we don't really have a lot of comments from the last show, probably because, the forum issues and stuff. But now that they're working again, everybody can go and rush and list lots and lots of comments. There's no reason now. Haha. Not to do that. And next show, you can also write in questions or anything about our next show. That will be Night of the Demon. Ooh, we're talking about a couple of games I'm pretty familiar with for once. Nocturne and Strange Journey.
And Mr. Baker can tell us about the earlier Shin Megami Tensei games.
Yep.
Sweet.
Well, at least Shin Megami Tensei 1 and If. I never actually got around to playing 2 before my Super Nintendo died on me again.
And I'm sure that many people in our audience have their own opinions on either the games we talked about today or the ones we're going to talk about next week, or maybe some other older RPGs that they played. And somebody can let their thoughts be heard by calling 801-810-5597 and telling your story. That's right. Get your thoughts recorded in RPG Backtrack history while you still can. Make sure you mention the game and the system, the year of release. Pull out a watch, make sure you're between 2 and 5 minutes. Call us up and let us know what you think about these games or some other ones.
And that number again is
801-810-5597. So, cool. Maybe, and you know what? And if you do it, I'll even send you a copy of Unlimited SaGa for free. Oh, wait.
Still, generosity will break the hearts of everyone.
I might not have.
Maybe something else.
I wonder if I still have that or not. I have to go back and look. Anywho. Oh, let's see here. Okay, so let's talk about pimpage. What do you want to pimp, or what have you been doing this week, or whatever the hell you want to talk about. Let's start with Mr. Apples.
I want to pimp SaGa.
Well, isn't that what you've been doing?
Maybe, but please play lots of SaGa, and maybe by some miracle, whatever next SaGa that comes out will actually come out in the U.S. That would make me happy. Or just, send some Q&A mail about SaGa. I'd love to hear other people's stories, As I'm sure you all know, it's the series that I grew up playing, and I enjoy talking about it. So yeah, send me some Q&A mail about SaGa. And also, I'd like to pimp if you have a Vita, the demo of Gravity Rush, because it was amazing.
Well, it's been getting pretty decent reviews. Last time I checked, I was reading specifically for that one because that was one of the demos I played too. That was very captivating. As far as just the aesthetics of the game were just absolutely amazing.
Oh
yeah. It did pretty good on IGN. It's been getting an average meta, I think, of like 7.5 or 8. User reviews were a little bit higher than that, so people seem to be enjoying it.
How are there any user reviews? It's not out till next month.
That's the funny thing about users. They review stuff that just based on the demos they played. It's great.
Oh, this game is going to be amazing.
Exactly.
I haven't played it yet, but 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. And they do just the opposite too. It's I've seen them bomb out a game like either right before or right after it came out, just because not because they played it, but because they didn't like the DRM on it or something along those lines. So I remember Command and Conquer.
Oh, the Star Ocean 4 reaction.
Oh yeah, Command and Conquer 4.
Where most of the people who responded could not have possibly played the game yet.
Yeah, isn't it awesome? That's just great. So, to me,
how could you bother playing the game? Then you might learn things that you didn't want to know.
Yeah, to me, the Metacritic and user scores, they're just barometer readings, and it's listening to you guys and reading reviews at RPGamer, listening and reading reviews by people who love RPGs that matter, most to me, and should matter the most to you as our listening audience. In all honesty, because you really want opinions from people who played a lot of RPGs and who love them, not from some guy who normally works in the sports section and got yanked to do, a review of of an RPG. So, is that it for you, Mr. Apples?
Yeah, go buy Romancing Saga. I think that most people will not regret it.
Sure. And how about you, Mr. Nathan?
Well, again, I like to champion SaGa whenever possible because it's an awesome series, but for the moment, I'll actually take the moment to actually pimp something, and that's, as some people may know, the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition playtest has started, so I encourage people to participate, and I don't know, maybe try not to voice it saying the current version of it is good, considering I don't really like the version of it at all. So, if you don't like the current way FIP is going, please say so, because we need more people saying that. That's all.
But what if I want to just stick with my 3.5 books, because I already have all of them, and it doesn't cost any money to play those?
That's good, but 3 has problems, 4E has problems. I want a better edition, not, the let's do things like they were in 1E edition.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else, Nathan?
Nah, that's all I can think of tonight.
Fair enough. And let's see here. Mr. Baker.
Yes?
How about you?
I've been trying to think of something that you guys could actually play over there.
Well, what's been making you can talk about what makes your heart happy.
I recommend Metal Max 3, but that's not going to happen. What else? What do I have around here?
We're crying tears of sadness right now.
Yeah.
I want to play that game so much.
Okay, how about Soul Hackers?
Yes.
Soul Hackers.
Yes, Soul Hackers. The 3DS remake is coming out in August in Japan, and there is a very good likelihood that it'll jump the Pacific. And if it does, be sure to try it out. It's kind of like Strange Journey, a little more user-friendly in some areas, and it has a really interesting cyberpunk story.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on your mind?
I notice you're not recommending PAL Shinken Densetsu.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Well, it's a question. It's a case where I actually liked it a little, but the issues involved with it just kept piling higher and 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 higher, and yeah. So,
I had that problem with
liked
Revengers
it better
of
than some
Vengeance.
games that I gave it 2, but I couldn't, in good conscience, give it anything higher than the score I gave it. So,
I had that problem with Revengers of Vengeance way back when, which I like the idea of putting a fighting game around an RPG mechanic with shooter segments in the middle to get your people stronger and get the money, but it's so badly implemented on every level that it got a 1.5. And the only way you'll ever play it is if you have a SaGa CD, so don't bother looking for it too hard.
yeah, I won't.
I didn't think you were at high risk of seeking out Revengers of Vengeance on the Mega CD.
Okay, how about you, Mr. Minky?
Well, I finished Super Robot Tyson Original Generation Saga Endless Frontier Exceed, and if you bother to look at the...
Say that 10 times fast.
I was about to say, just the fact that you enunciated that whole title correctly, that alone is an accomplishment. Screw the game. Just, wow.
I particularly liked that the final boss reminded me strongly of fighting Wodan Ymir in Frudgelmer from Original Generation 2. And I think he had the same voice actor, too, which doesn't necessarily make sense, but whatever, it was cool.
I was going to say, the final boss of that game was an ancient evil that possessed a 3-meter tall mecha, right?
Yes, and
That-
looked
that's how
identical
it turned out.
to a 20-meter tall mecha from the original generation series proper.
Which I'm sure was entirely intentional.
Oh yes, along with having the same voice actor as piloted that 20-meter tall mech.
Yep.
And I just started. Actually, I didn't just start since I got married in it. Dragon Quest V on DS, and this is one of the stronger Dragon Quests I've played. The whole guiding your character from a little kid who's barely taking on slimes to seeking out the hero, and apparently you're not the hero. Maybe your kids are. I gather that you eventually have children in this game. It's doing that very well. The combat is, well, it's Dragon Quest. There's nothing particularly special there, but it's one of the better Dragon Quests, most definitely.
I hear a lot of Dragon Quest fans calling that one the best, so...
I don't feel prepared to say that when I haven't tried all of them enough to give a judgment. Although I can
It
probably
definitely
say...
has one of the more centralized stories of the series.
Oh, and I got married to Deborah, whatever that's worth. And let's see. I'll just shout out a few movies because, as everybody knows, I watch a ton of them. Here are two sides of Nicolas Cage. The serious, good actor side in Red Rock West, which, if you haven't seen, involves him going up to Wyoming in search of a job, coming into a bar run by G.T. Walsh, and G.T. Walsh handing over $5,000 and saying that it's for the killing of his wife. Then him going to visit the wife, Laura Flynn Boyle, and she doubling the offer to go back and kill him. And then the actual guy who's supposed to come up and do the job, Dennis Hopper, eventually shows up, and it just gets crazier from there, and it's really fun, and Nicolas Cage is really good in it. Or there's the Nicolas Cage in unrestrained, full chewing on the clouds mode in Vampire's Kiss, where he starts out sounding like Keanu Reeves for some reason. I don't know why, but he talks like this through the whole movie. And then he starts to really go over the top. It's not enough to just jump on the desk at work and start shouting at his secretary. No, we have to have him shaking his head back and forth in the hallway, telling her, too late, too late, too late. Or later, running down the streets of New York going, I'm a vampire, I'm a vampire, I'm a vampire. Or because he cannot afford the more realistic vampire fangs, he buys the cheap plastic ones in a shop and runs around with them in a nightclub and bites someone on the neck. And at the end, he imagines that he's talking to a woman he has just created in his own mind and walks down the street of New York talking to this person. So if you're there to see Nicolas Cage go full scale into orbit with his scenery chewing, you'll have a fun time because he makes it hilarious. The movie is terrible, but he makes it really funny.
What's the name of that movie again?
Vampire's Kiss.
Vampire's Kiss.
Maria Conchita Alonso is in there, for whatever that's worth. She was a Miss Teenager of the World in the 70s, and she's still really good looking. And then, of course, Nicolas Cage treats her like dirt because she's his secretary, and it's a movie made in the 80s. Ha, 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 ha. Yeah. Of course, you could still make a movie like that, and not much would have to change. And let's see. I haven't seen many other new movies, but I'll just pick one that I saw in Turner Classic. Merrily We Live, which is a great screwball, which is unfortunately not on any kind of video. And look, if you've seen screwball comedies, this is a really good one. It involves a tramp being brought into a household by Billy Burke. And if you don't know who Billy Burke is, just think of Glinda the Witch of the Good Witch, and you'll get her. That's Billy Burke.
Oh.
And you can just picture her as the matriarch of a household and kind of get an idea that that person would not be entirely with it. She takes in a tramp, and what do you know? The tramp turns out to not necessarily be a tramp, but the fun of a screwball is not the plot, but getting there. And I really recommend you track it down if you possibly can, and you're going to need to use either Turner Classic or the internet to do it, because it's never been on any kind of video. And that's enough for now. I'll let Phil speak.
Well, I didn't get to watch actually didn't watch any movies since last time. Go Avengers. No, been spending all of my living, breathing, free time playing Diablo. Yeah, the reviews pretty much nail this on the head. It's a really, really, really good game, and just put my own personal spin on it. I'm a typical RPGamer type of dude. My father is totally different than me. He lives in California, and just totally different outlook on life than me. And my wife is from Indonesia, totally different than me. And all three of us are on Diablo playing together. And and a family that slays together stays together. And it's just,
You mean when the servers are up, Phil, right?
yeah. Well, I haven't got to that yet. Hold on now. Hold on to the horses. Okay. So, just really, really solid game. 5 classes. Each one of them feels so different. Each one of them feels very solid. You play the warrior. You actually feel like you're playing the warrior. It's just very, very well done from the game. From the game, just absolutely feeling so solid. The storyline is ho-hum throwaway. It's so cliche. I guess you don't play these games for the stories. I don't know. I think it would have been really, really nice for Blizzard to put some thought into the story. The music is also forgettable. I swear sometimes I just throw on my own music because I get tired of hearing it. Not a big fan of the music. And then my third beefy complaint is absolutely the connectability. This is so ridiculous to have a game that in the past this genre has always had, whether it was one of the older Diablos or any of the other action RPGs that have followed in its wake, they've all, for the most part, had single-player campaigns that could be played offline. And Diablo does not have that. And that is really irritating, especially given the fact that for whatever gosh darn reason, they can keep the servers up. Even right now, at the time of this recording, the server is down again. And this game's been out for, almost 2 weeks now? And the auction house, the functionality on that one has been very limited because they can't seem to get the coding straight on that. The commodity market, commodity part of the auction house in particular has not been working at all, hardly. And so it's kind of disappointing that Blizzard, who is known for their spit and polish, that while they still nailed down the Blizzard formula in the gameplay department, which is the most important department in the action RPG genre, it really is sad to see that they lacked any of that spit and polish in some of the other areas. So Adrian has already reviewed it on his site, gave it a 5 out of 5. I cannot extend it that courtesy because these other elements, especially the network connectivity, do constitute a part of the experience. And having the world's best game doesn't mean crapola if I can't connect to play it. And I had Pluckered, and I'm not even just complaining about the first day blues. Again, we are almost 2 weeks out, and I still can't get on it. So, I got on it a lot in between. But, tonight, I come home, long day at work. I'm looking forward to playing some more Diablo. Well, actually, I was looking forward to doing the podcast. But I know a lot of people are looking forward to playing Diablo, and they can't do it because the servers are having canaries or something. It says it's busy or something. Poop. This isn't an MMO. Anywho's, I'd still give it a 4.5. I'll take away. I'll stop it short of what's a 5.0 for us? That's not perfect though. It's like excellent or something. What is a 5.0? Anybody know?
That's
Really, really good, but does not actually have to be perfect because that's a very sticky definition to argue.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think I think websites that never give out a 10 out of 10 or their highest score, I think they're silly. I absolutely do. Or they think only one game like Zelda, Ocarina of Time is usually the one. It was the only game worth giving their Gold Award to of a perfect score.
Phil, that's the reason why our former contributor, Mr. Otter, never gave a 5 because he felt that no game could deserve it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely silly. I absolutely think that's silly. I think the gameplay alone definitely is worth the 5.5. It's just these other 3 elements that they may sound nitpicking, but I'm sorry, you got RPG somewhere in your title. Story should be a little bit more important. They do have some good voice acting. The characters are okay. As always, their cutscenes, the few cutscenes they have in there are absolutely Blizzard gorgeous. It's just the story itself is more cliche than another remake of Lord of the Rings. So yeah, that get your internet working. Anyways, Jeez, aside from that, I've just been playing some Infamous, which I'm surprised we don't cover that because I swear I got experience points in that game. I like that
Don't
game.
bring it up. We don't need the next.
Have
what
you-
classifies as
Have
an
y'all
RPG
played? Have y'all played Infamous? Anybody else played Infamous? No, guess not. It's really,
Yes.
You gotta think hard about Infamous.
No, I love Infamous.
Isn't it great? It's a pretty cool game. I'm enjoying that.
I'm not usually the biggest fan of that kind of open world game, but I think that is by far one of the best open world games you could play because just the whole thing is designed around using his superpowers.
You know,
So you can just wander around and just have a lot of fun.
I have to agree with you. I normally am not the biggest fan of open world, or when I do play an open world game like Grand Theft Auto 4, I just pretty much stick to the main story and I don't do that much sidetracking because it really doesn't appeal to me. But in this one, because you're right, you're farting around with these superpowers, it's just fun just to go and blast the bad guys, and you got this huge city to play around with. I've actually done most of the optional missions. I now have like 84% of the city that's safe. You know, so
I've been doing the same thing.
yeah, that game is pretty cool in that regard. So if you haven't checked out Infamous, you can probably get it real cheap nowadays. I would highly recommend it. And farting.
They gave away the digital version as a possible free choice after the whole PSN outage.
Oh right.
That was certainly your best opportunity to pick it up.
Yeah, a lot of my friends got it that way too. They got it off of that whole PlayStation network deal that when it was down and it came back up. One of my friends got Infamous that way, and he totally enjoyed it. But at the time, I didn't have the time to play it, so I didn't jump into it right away. I think that's all I've done for the moment, other than farting around in Sacred some more. I like the graphics in Sacred. 2D isometric graphics. Yum. Beautiful 2D isometric graphics. So, but the gameplay isn't as tight as Diablo. So, more hours get put into Diablo when the servers are up. Anywho, I think that's it for all of us. Thank you, Mr. Baker, Mr. Apps, and Mr. Nathan, who had to run away to go get something to eat. For
That
being
happens
on
when you
the
don't eat
show.
lunch.
Yeah, how silly not to eat lunch. That's just a silly thing to do. I thank you, our listening
Speaking of which, I need to eat lunch pretty soon, too.
Yeah, well, we're just about done here. I thank you, our listening audience, for listening to us. You are the reason we do this. So do us a big, huge favor. Rate us on iTunes and all those other websites. And leave comments on our forums at rpgamer.com. Is it /forum, right? Something like that. So
There's a link on the site.
there's a link on the site, rpgamer.com. And go listen to all of our back history of backtracks. We got lots now. Holy cow. Been doing this for a while now. Sweet mercy. Hey, you know what? RPG Backtrack, by the way, boys and girls, it's a production of rpgamer.com. That is, and should, if it isn't, it should be your only source for RPG news, impressions, reviews, articles, and we have the best gaming community on the net. So write us questions and comments on our boards or email me at jcservant@rpgamer.com. Who knows what we'll do with them. Maybe we'll read them on the air or something fun like that. Follow us at twitter.com/rpgamer and become our biggest fans at facebook.com/rpgamer. And of course, we got that other podcast. What was it called? Something cast? RPG cast, yeah. That's all at our...
called Grenade Cast, that's it.
Yeah, they're not nearly as cool as we are. But you should probably listen to them anyways, because they go over the more current stuff. In fact, I think they had a long Diablo chit-chat last time I was listening to. Anyway, that's all at rpgamer.com. Mr. Miki, put us to bed.
Well, I was going to say something, but really, I have no hope of explaining Unlimited Saga when the experts have already been at it, and Romancing Saga, again, the experts have already had it. So take what they said to heart and be well.